All right, ready to dive headfirst into a whole day's worth of baseball. The stories, the diamonds, maybe even some umpire drama.
Oh, I'm ready when you are. Always love a good deep dive into game day.
Okay, so we're talking blowouts, we're talking those nail-biters that have you on the edge of your seat, plus some seriously impressive individual performances. When you look at these reports, what jumps out first?
Well, it's tough to ignore the offensive firepower, right? I mean, Ben Tomchik over there with the Tidewater Drillers going 4 for 5 slams, 2 home runs, 2 and 6 RBIs. That's a career day for most guys.
6 RBIs. You got to wonder, were those Drillers pitching coaches just lobbing softballs at him during practice or something? That's incredible.
And it's not just him. Adrian Shao plays for the South Bend Cardinals. He hits a grand slam, a granny. Bottom of the ninth, bases loaded, 1 swing, 7 RBIs.
Okay, hold on. As someone who's actually stood in that batter's box, can we just talk about that pressure for a second?
Yep.
Bases loaded, bottom of the ninth, the game is on the line.
Yeah.
How do you even step into that box without your knees like completely giving out?
Honestly, you've either got ice in your veins or you've trained so much, so hard that your body just takes over. Instinct. Sounds like Shao, he just went with it, and it paid off big time. And we're not talking about low-scoring games here either. The Drillers, they won 14-2, and then the Cardinals, thanks in part to Shao's slam, they win 18-7.
So we're talking offensive explosions all over the place. I can practically hear the commentators now. Get the rally caps on, folks, because this one's going to be a wild ride. But baseball's not all about those big hits, right? What about the unsung heroes, those guys behind the plate making those tough calls?
Oh, absolutely. A whole game can change on a single call from an umpire. And, we've got some good ones. This report, the one about the T-Town Jackos and the JR bats, Adam Duncan, he pitches a complete game victory for the Jackos, a tight one, 3-2. But the report, it actually calls out great umps, great communication, just shows you, even when it's a low-scoring game, a well-called game makes all the difference.
Makes you wonder, were they calling a really tight strike zone that day? Maybe kept those hitters on their toes a little more? It's just interesting, how those little details, they all add up. But of course, we wouldn't be doing a real baseball deep dive if we didn't talk about a little umpire controversy, would we?
Oh, there's always controversy. Definitely saw a few raised eyebrows in these reports. A few choice words for the umps, probably muttered under people's breath too. Inconsistent strike zones, missed calls. Even one guy, an umpire, got called out for not taking control of a game that got a little heated.
The Knoxville Nightmare versus the Tennessee White Lightning. The Nightmare won 7-0, but that report, it mentioned things getting a little chippy.
Yeah.
Sounds like maybe that umpire let a few too many things slide.
Yeah, being an umpire, that's a tough job. You got to make those split-second decisions under all that pressure and those calls. They can make or break the game.
And that's what makes it interesting, right? Because look, instant replay, all that technology, it's great, but you're always going to have that human element, that human judgment. And yeah, sometimes human error too. And speaking of human error, one game report really jumped out at me. The Austin Salt Dogs versus the Philadelphia Dirt Dogs.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one. The Dirt Dogs won it 9-7, but there was some real head-scratching going on thanks to an infield fly rule call.
Okay, so for our listeners who might not be as familiar with all the ins and outs of the rule book, can you give us a little refresher on the infield fly rule?
Sure, it's basically there to stop the defense from intentionally dropping an easy pop fly. Trying to turn a double play. So if the umpire calls an infield fly, batter's automatically out, even if the ball doesn't get caught.
So there's a lot of judgment involved there. What happened in this game?
Well, the home plate umpire, he calls infield fly, but it's almost like nobody else on the field heard him, even the other umpire. Total confusion.
Oh, man, you've got a feel for the players in that situation. All of a sudden, the count's messed up. Nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah, it actually caused arguments later about the count. Even though the umpire, to his credit, he was trying to talk it out, be collaborative. The other team's scorekeeper, they admitted that they'd even changed their count based on that infield fly call before they realized that nobody else was on the same page.
What a mess. But hey, I guess that's baseball, right? Totally unpredictable.
Absolutely. And speaking of unpredictable, how about we talk about some of those standout pitching performances? Because it wasn't all about the offense, we'd had some pitchers really putting on a show.
Oh, for sure. Who impressed you the most?
David Nutter with the Baltimore Chop. He had a phenomenal game. Pitched 7 1/3 innings, only gave up 2 runs, struck out 5 batters.
7 1/3 innings of solid work. That's the kind of performance that wins championships. And it just goes to show you, sometimes it's not about striking everybody out. It's about keeping those hitters off balance, making them uncomfortable.
Exactly. You got to keep them guessing. And then there's Henry Peter, also on the Baltimore chop. This guy, he pitched 8 1/3 innings, gave up 2 runs, but both of them were unearned, and they happened in the 9th.
Wait, hold on. He goes into the N8th, only 2 runs against him, and they're unearned. Ouch, that's got to sting.
Oh, for sure. But, even in a loss, you got to recognize a performance like that.
Absolutely. It's about those little victories, even within a loss. And hey, speaking of great performances, even in a loss, what about Jamie Trim from JR Bats?
Oh, yeah. Great example of a guy who left it all out on the field, pitched 6 solid innings, 0 earned runs, and even got himself a hit in 3 at-bats.
Battling on the mound, A&D at the plate. Now that's a gamer right there.
Absolutely. Shows you, even when you don't get the win, those individual efforts, they matter. For the team's morale, Every game is a learning experience, building towards something bigger.
Speaking of building towards something, we got to talk about some of these hitters. Because October 21st, there were some offensive juggernauts out there. We already talked about Ben Tomchik's game, but there are a few others that deserve some love. How about we start with Joe Halleck? Minnesota Blenders.
Now, there's a guy who knows how to find a gap. 5 for 6 at the plate, including a home run, 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored.
5 for 6. Did they even bother pitching to him, or did they just lay out the red carpet to first base?
It was that kind of day for the Blenders. They crushed the South Florida Eagles 25-3. And it wasn't just Halleck either. Will Summerendike, he's with the Tidewater Drillers, goes 4 for 5, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs.
Hold on. 2 players, same team, both hit T2EO home runs in the same game.
Right.
That's got to be some kind of record.
Yeah, not something you see every day. That Drillers offense was on fire.
It's games like this that remind you why we love baseball, right? The skill, the strategy, and yeah, sometimes it's just watching these incredible athletes do things that make you wonder how they even defy gravity.
Speaking of defying gravity, have you ever seen a day where it felt like every other hit was a home run? Seriously, it was like every team just decided, all right, we're swinging for the fences today, and we haven't even gotten to Mike Moriarty yet. Philadelphia Dirt Dogs.
All right, you got to give me the rundown on this Moriarty guy. What do you do? Hit for the cycle?
Almost. 4 for 5, 2 of them home runs, 5 RBIs. The Dirt Dogs, they took down the Cincinnati Colt .45s, 13-3. Moriarty, he was a big reason why.
Makes you wonder if they were playing with those little league fences or something. But before we get too lost in all these crazy offensive numbers, let's not forget every single run that goes up on that board. That's a run that a pitcher fought tooth and nail to prevent. Were there any pitching performances in these high-scoring games that really stood out to you?
Oh, definitely. Look at Rusty Ventresca, Glass City Black Sox. This guy, he went 4 for 4 at the plate, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. The whole shebang.
Sounds like he was seeing beach balls up there instead of fastballs.
Right. It was a hitter's day for sure. But you're right. Those pitchers, they were battling. And Ventresca, his performance, it helped the Black Sox to a pretty decisive win, 10-1, over those Cincinnati Colt .45s.
It's funny, even when you have these games where the runs are just piling up, you still get those standout pitching performances. It's the whole back and forth, the adjustments, the pitcher outsmarting the batter outsmarting the pitcher.
Actually, every at-bat, it's a battle. Mental, physical, the whole deal.
And then you get those guys, maybe they don't hit the long ball, but they find a way to make an impact. Jeff Thrapis, Baltimore chop. What do you think?
Oh, Thrapis, the unsung hero, right. He might not have the flashy stats, but look at this. 2 hits, 3 RBIs, helped the chop to a win, 11-7 over the Vucryps Ecrines. Those are the clutch performances, the ones that fly under the radar but can really swing a game.
Situational hitting, right. Knowing what the team needs and getting it done. Not every hero's got that big swing. Sometimes it's about those smaller moments. Well said. And hey, while we're on the topic of clutch, Tom DeLulo, Akron Cardinals, he deserves a shout-out.
Okay, what'd DeLulo do?
Well, his team, they lost. Tough one, 18-7 against the South Bend Cardinals, but he went 2 for 3, a home run, 2 RBIs. Not too shabby.
It's one thing to hit a home run when your team's already up by a bunch, but when you're trailing, trying to spark a rally, that takes some guts.
No doubt about it. Speaking of guys who can change the momentum of a game, how about Zach Darabaris, Chicago Giants?
What'd Darabaris do? Hit a walk-off?
Well, not quite, but he was a one-man wrecking crew on the base paths. 4 for 5 at the plate, 2 doubles, scored 4 runs, and drove one in. This guy was everywhere.
4 hits and 5 at-bats. It's like he was playing a different game out there.
And his teammate, John Jensen, he had a good day, too.
Yeah.
3 for 4, 2 doubles, 3 RBIs.
Wow. Sounds like the Giants were an offensive machine that day, even though they ended up losing, right? 11-10 to the South Florida Eagles.
Yeah, tough one. back and forth the whole time. Games like that, they really remind you every single run matters. They don't call it a game of inches for nothing. You got to love the drama, though. Speaking of drama, were there any other close ones that had you biting your nails down to the nub?
Oh, yeah, for sure. How about the Minnesota Web Gems? They just barely scraped by the jet box, 4-2. You could feel the tension in the air, everyone holding their breath until that last out.
It's those low-scoring games where you really see how important the pitching and defense is. Every pitch, every play, it's magnified, right?
Absolutely. When runs are hard to come by, any mistake can be the difference between winning and losing. Another one like that was the Chicago Giants versus the Baltimore Chop, 4-3. Some real gutsy pitching on both sides.
And in those close games, you got to give credit to the guys on the mound who make it happen. David Nutter, Baltimore Chop, another impressive outing. 7 1/3 innings, only 2 runs in that 4-3 win.
7 1/3 innings, holding them at bay. That's focus right there. And hey, don't forget about Henry Peter, same team, Baltimore Chop, tossed 8 1/3 innings, only gave up those 2 unearned runs in the 4-3 loss against the Chicago Giants in a different game.
Man, as a pitcher, those unearned runs, that's got to sting a little extra, don't you think? But still, a gutsy performance deserves some respect, win or lose.
Absolutely. And speaking of gutsy, how about Louis Negron from the Chicago Knights?
What about him?
This guy was like the star of the show in their 3-1 win over the Jetbox. Not only did he pitch a complete game, gave up just 1 run, but he also went 1 for 3 at the plate, got himself a double A and D, a stolen base.
A complete game and a stolen base.
Yeah.
That's what you call a two-way threat.
Yeah.
Don't see pitchers contributing that much on offense every day.
Right. He did it all that game.
You know, it's those kinds of performances, the Negrons of the world, that really show you the beauty of baseball, the individual brilliance, but also the team effort. It all comes together.
Could have said it better myself. That perfect mix of individual talent and team strategy.
Well said. Now, before we head into the final inning of our deep dive, I'm going to throw you a curveball. You ready? All right, listeners, we're heading into the final inning of our deep dive here. Saved some of the most interesting stuff for last.
Think of it as that 7th inning stretch for your brain. Had our fill of hot dogs and Cracker Jacks. Now it's time for those weird plays, those head-scratching moments that make you go, wait, what just happened?
You're talking about the things that even the announcers have trouble explaining, right? Those little glimpses into the crazy side of baseball.
Exactly. And today we've got a couple of doozies. First up, remember those 2 abandoned games on the schedule? Chi Sox versus the Akron Cardinals and the Chicago Knights against the New Jersey Mets.
2 games, called off same day. Talk about a rain delay from out of nowhere. What happened? They're not releasing the details or something?
You'd think with all the instant updates we get now, we'd know, right? But the reports, they're quiet on those 2.
Okay, now you've got me really curious. All right, listeners, what do you think happened? Zombie apocalypse, alien invasion. I'm going with a flock of geese. Decided to make the pitcher's mound their new home.
While we're all pondering those mysteries, how about we circle back to the Philadelphia Dirt Dogs, their 9-7 win over the Austin Salt Dogs. Remember that infield fly call, the one that had everyone baffled?
Oh yeah, like trying to explain the infield fly rule to your friend who's never watched baseball wasn't hard enough already.
Well, get this. That whole game started off just as weird as it ended. Gary Farr, he's pitching for the Salt Dogs, hits a leadoff home run, first at bat, gone.
Talk about setting the tone. I bet that woke up the dugout, even if they didn't get the W. Gotta love a little pitcher offense.
And speaking of starting strong, Robert Williams, Akron Cardinals, he had himself a day at the plate, 3 for 5, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs.
Okay, that's good, but is that enough to win a home run derby?
It was. Final score, Akron Cardinals 19-14 over those Chi Sox, 33 total runs.
33 runs in one game. That's practically a football score. Amazing how these games can go from a pitcher's duel to a full-on slugfest.
That's baseball for you. Never know what you're going to get. Keeps things interesting.
And that just about wraps up our deep dive into October 21st baseball. We saw some crazy offense, some incredible pitching, a few questionable calls, and even a couple of unsolved mysteries.
We learned about coming up clutch when it matters, how important those umpires really are, and how sometimes, even in a loss, there are still some amazing individual performances.
So next time you're watching a game, even just catching the highlights, remember, there's always more to the story than meets the eye. Listen for those little details, the things you weren't expecting, because those are the moments that make this game so great.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Until next time, keep swinging for the fences.
And we'll catch you on our next deep dive.